Sylvester Stallone, the legendary actor known for his roles in action films like Rocky and Rambo, was invited to appear on a live TV show. The host, a well-known liberal personality, was eager to challenge Stallone on some controversial issues. Stallone wasn't exactly known for being a political figure, but he was known for speaking his mind. The invitation was meant to be a light-hearted discussion, but little did the host know, things would take a surprising turn. From the moment the cameras turned on, there was an air of tension. The host welcomed Stallone with a warm smile, but behind that smile was a plan to corner him. The topic? Politics. The host wanted to dig into Stallone's thoughts about the current state of America. Most guests on this show would often nod and agree with whatever the host said, but this time, things were going to be different. As the conversation started, Stallone was calm and composed. The host began by making a few general comments about Hollywood actors and their responsibility to speak out on political issues. Stallone nodded politely but said little. The host pushed harder, making it clear that they expected Stallone to align with a certain political ideology. Stallone, however, wasn't about to be pressured into saying something he didn't believe. The host made a subtle dig, suggesting that actors like Stallone, who played tough guys on screen, should be more outspoken about what's right and wrong in society. This was the first hook, the first moment when the audience leaned in, waiting for Stallone's response. Would he agree? Would he stay silent? The tension was building, and Stallone was about to make his move. Stallone wasn't known for mincing words, but he also wasn't the type to lose his cool easily. The host, feeling more confident, began to push harder. They started throwing around phrases like toxic masculinity and how action movies had shaped a generation of men in the wrong way. The host expected Stallone to apologize, to back down, or at least offer some kind of defense. But instead, Stallone remained calm, his eyes locked on the host. "What are you trying to say?" Stallone asked, his voice steady, but there was an edge to it. The host hesitated for a moment, realizing that Stallone wasn't going to just go along with the narrative they were pushing. The audience could feel it too. This wasn't going to be the typical interview where the celebrity agrees with everything. The host tried again, this time being more direct. They asked Stallone if he felt responsible for promoting outdated ideas of what it meant to be a man. Stallone leaned forward slightly, his expression serious. "I play characters," he said. "They're not real. But you're sitting here, trying to tell me that people can't tell the difference between movies and real life." This was a second hook, and it caught the audience by surprise. They weren't expecting Stallone to push back like this. The host tried to regain control of the conversation, but it was clear that Stallone wasn't going to back down. The tension in the room was palpable, and the viewers at home were glued to their screens, waiting to see what would happen next. Not one to give up easily, the host decided to switch tactics. They moved the conversation to the topic of gun control, knowing that Stallone had played many roles where guns were a central part of the action. "Don't you think," the host began, "that movies like yours glorify violence and make people more accepting of guns in society?" Stallone's face remained neutral, but you could tell he was thinking carefully about his response. This was a tricky subject, and the host knew it. They were hoping to trap Stallone into saying something controversial that would make headlines. But Stallone wasn't easily rattled. "I think people know the difference between entertainment and real life," Stallone said firmly. "Movies are stories. They're meant to entertain, to make people feel something. But if someone is making decisions based on what they see in a movie, that's not the movie's fault." The host, clearly unsatisfied with this answer, pressed on. "But don't you think Hollywood has a responsibility to show a different kind of message, to promote peace instead of violence?" This was another hook, another moment designed to get Stallone to trip up. But Stallone wasn't biting. "There's a place for all kinds of stories," Stallone replied. "Some people want to watch movies that make them think. Others want to escape for a couple of hours. That's the beauty of it. There's room for everything." The audience was hooked now. Stallone was calm, cool, and collected, and the host was struggling to keep up. The tension was growing, and everyone was waiting for the moment when things would really explode. The host, feeling the pressure of the conversation slipping away, decided to go for the jugular. They brought up one of Stallone's most iconic roles, Rambo, a character who symbolized toughness and survival at any cost. Rambo is a symbol of everything that's wrong with America today, the host said boldly. It's all about guns, violence, and toxic masculinity. Don't you think it's time we move away from that? This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. The tension had reached its peak, and it was clear that Stallone wasn't going to sit quietly anymore. He leaned back in his chair, took a deep breath, and then spoke. Rambo is a character. Stallone began slowly. He's a soldier, a man who's been through things most people can't even imagine. But you're sitting here, trying to tell me that a fictional character is the cause of society's problems? That's a stretch. The audience was hooked. They could sense that Stallone wasn't done. He had more to say, and it was going to be explosive. You know, Stallone continued, I think the real problem is when people try to simplify everything. You're blaming movies, characters, and actors for problems that are way bigger than any film. You want to make it black and white, but life isn't like that. The host, realizing they were losing control, tried one last time to regain the upper hand. They accused Stallone of being out of touch with the modern world, of clinging to outdated ideas. People want change, Sylvester. They want to move forward, not hold on to the past. But Stallone wasn't about to let that slide. Change is good, he said, but not when it's forced. People need to decide for themselves what they want. You can't shove ideas down their throats and expect them to just go along with it. This was the final hook, the moment that solidified Stallone's dominance in the conversation. The audience was on the edge of their seats, watching as the host struggled to come up with a response. But it was too late. Stallone had won. The interview ended shortly after that, but the impact was immediate. Clips of the interview spread like wildfire online, with people praising Stallone for standing his ground. The host, who had been so confident at the beginning, was left speechless. No one expected Stallone to respond the way he did. But that's what made it so memorable. Viewers couldn't stop talking about the interview. Stallone had not only defended himself, but he had also called out the media's tendency to oversimplify complex issues. It was a powerful moment, one that shocked everyone who watched. In the days that followed, the interview became a topic of discussion on news channels and social media platforms. People praised Stallone for his calm demeanor and for standing up to the host's attempts to bait him. The host, on the other hand, received criticism for their approach. Sylvester Stallone had once again proven that he wasn't just an action star. He was a man with principles, someone who wouldn't be pushed around or forced to say things he didn't believe. And in doing so, he had earned the respect of millions. As the interview clips continued to circulate online, the response was overwhelming. Stallone's takedown of the host became the talk of the town, and it wasn't just his fans who were praising him. People from all walks of life, whether they agreed with his stance or not, appreciated how he handled the situation. The internet, known for being unforgiving at times, erupted with memes, tweets, and posts highlighting Stallone's calm yet firm responses. The hashtag #StalloneDestroys started trending on social media platforms, and everyone seemed to have an opinion on the showdown. The clips were shared millions of times, and Stallone's words were being replayed on countless devices. Even people who hadn't watched the original interview now knew about it because of how widely it was shared. But what really captured people's attention was not just what Stallone said, but how he said it. He didn't yell, he didn't get angry, and he didn't insult the host. Instead, he used simple logic and common sense, and that resonated with people. The host, on the other hand, became the subject of criticism. Many viewers pointed out how they had tried to corner Stallone with leading questions and how their strategy had backfired. Comment sections filled up with people discussing how the host's attempts to trap Stallone were not only obvious, but also unfair. But despite all the noise, Stallone remained silent. He didn't engage in the online debates, and he didn't post any responses. He let his words from the interview speak for themselves, and that silence spoke louder than anything else. As the frenzy surrounding the interview continued, People began to realize that Stallone's message was about more than just movies and Hollywood. His words touched on a deeper issue: the importance of critical thinking and not allowing others to dictate what we believe. In a world where people are constantly told what to think, Stallone had reminded everyone of the value of independent thought. News outlets began analyzing the interview, dissecting each of Stallone's responses and discussing the broader implications. Pundits debated whether Hollywood celebrities should be expected to align with certain political views or if, like Stallone, they should be allowed to have their own perspectives without being attacked for them. Interestingly, Stallone had managed to turn the conversation away from the host's initial goal of criticizing his films and action heroes. Instead, the conversation shifted to the idea of freedom of speech and how important it is to allow diverse opinions in the public sphere. Stallone had turned the tables without even trying to, simply by standing his ground and refusing to be pushed into a corner. While Stallone emerged from the interview stronger than ever, the host faced significant backlash. Critics accused him of trying too hard to make a headline-grabbing moment, and many believed they had underestimated Stallone's intelligence and quick thinking. The host's reputation took a hit, and viewers who once tuned in to see their shows began questioning their credibility. 4 days after the interview, the host attempted to explain their side of the story. They made public statements, insisting that they were simply asking tough questions and that Stallone's response was unexpected. However, the damage had already been done. The internet wasn't forgiving, and it was clear that Stallone had won in the court of public opinion. The host's network even started receiving complaints from viewers who felt the interview was biased. Some suggested that the host had crossed a line by trying to provoke Stallone instead of having a respectful conversation. In the end, what was meant to be a simple talk show appearance turned into a moment that would define both Stallone and the host for a long time to come. As the dust settled, Stallone chose not to engage further with the media frenzy. He didn't appear on talk shows to discuss the interview, and he didn't post anything on social media about it. In fact, he went back to his normal life, continuing to work on his upcoming projects. But his silence only made people respect him more. Stallone's decision to stay quiet after the interview made it clear that he wasn't interested in fueling the fire. He had said what he needed to say during the interview, and he saw no reason to keep the conversation going. It was a lesson in dignity and restraint, and people admired him for it. Meanwhile, his fan base grew. New fans, who had never paid much attention to his films before, were now watching his old movies and appreciating them in a new light. Stallone had managed to not only defend himself, but also elevate his public image in a way that few could have predicted. He didn't need to shout or get angry to make his point. He just needed to stay true to himself. Months after the interview, the memory of Stallone's powerful response remained fresh in people's minds. It had become a defining moment in his career, a reminder that sometimes the best way to handle pressure is by staying calm and standing your ground. Stallone's words had sparked important conversations about freedom of speech, media bias, and the role of celebrities in society. In the end, Stallone didn't just win an argument. He made a statement. He showed that no matter how hard someone tries to box you in, you always have the power to control your own narrative. His response had shocked everyone, not because it was loud or aggressive, but because it was thoughtful, measured, and true to who he was. And that's the lesson that stayed with people long after the interview was over.